Thank you. For those in the audience, our Lunch and Learn is going to follow our quick special assembly meeting. So we will bring that to order. February 23rd, 2024. Mr. Kelly, would you do the land acknowledgement, please?
I'd be honored to, Madam Mayor. We would like to acknowledge that the city and borough of Juneau is on Tlingit land and wish to honor the indigenous people of this land. For more than 10,000 years, Alaska Native people have been and continue to be integral to the well-being of our community. We are grateful to be in this place, a part of this community, and to honor the culture, traditions, and resilience of the Tlingit people. Gunas Chish.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Madam Clerk, will you call roll?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. If I might.
And Michelle Hale has her hand up.
Deputy Mayor Hill is moving over as a panelist, we hope, at this time.
Ms. Hale, have you joined us?
I have joined you. Thank you very much.
So Ms. Hale is present. Mr. Bryson,
Present.
Ms. Hughes Scandies,
Here.
Mr. Smith is not with us. Ms. Wall,
Present.
Walakida,
Here.
Mr. Kelly,
Here.
Ms. Adkisson,
Here.
and Mayor Weldon.
Here.
The quorum is present.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So we'll go to agenda topics, to the consent agenda. Since all the ordinances are introduction, I'll skip the public request thing and go to the assembly. Is there any request from the assembly for consent agenda changes? Seeing none, assembly action. Mr. Bryson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that the Assembly adopt the consent agenda, and I ask for unanimous consent.
Thank you, Mr. Bryson. Any objection? I'm sorry?
Madam Mayor.
Go ahead, Ms. Manager.
Thank you, Mayor Weldon. You do have a memo in your packet.
I hadn't got to that
Oh,
yet.
sorry.
I just said the consent agenda is adopted. Next, we have a memo from Ms. Kester. Ms. Kester.
Thank you, Mayor Weldon. Apologies. I should have known better. You know exactly what you're doing. There's a memo in your packet that talks about additional public testimony for these three ordinances. I know that's a big desire of the Assembly. So it lays out three different options. You recall when we last discussed this, we had laid out a plan that had final adoption on a committee of the whole before on a special meeting before the committee of the whole on March 11th. That timeline has accelerated a little bit just for the desire for the school district to have some budget certainty as they're working through their budget process. However, you know, this body has to also balance your need for public process. So I have on page 3 of your packet just 3 options before you that would help address that question of when and if for that additional public testimony. The first option is no changes, final adoption, and public hearing on the March 4th meeting. The second option would be to insert public testimony at Monday's meeting. That, of course, does not give a lot of time for public notice, so that's a bit problematic. The third option would be to have a public hearing at the March 4th regular assembly meeting, and then a public hearing and adoption at a special meeting before the COW on March 11th.
Thank you, Madam Manager. I don't see any questions. Mr. Kelly.
If you're ready for a motion, I can make one.
Certainly, make a motion, Mr. Kelly.
I move that the Assembly hold a public hearing at the March 4th regular Assembly meeting and a public hearing and adoption at a special meeting on March 11th, 2024.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Any objection? Ms. Wall.
Just an objection for a question and probably a comment also. First question for the manager. I am definitely concerned about the lack of input we've gotten so far, but I'm not surprised because the public has their attention squarely focused on the consolidation options and have been showing up to those meetings in large numbers. I want to make sure we get the word out because I think these decisions have significant impact on our community, and I'm sure no one really knows that at this moment, or not many people know that. And so I'm curious what the plans would be to get that notice out there. Can we use the school district in their channels? They obviously know how to reach a lot of their public. Just curious about what that looks like for any of these options.
Thank you, Ms. Wall. Ms. Kester?
I'm sure we can work with Superintendent Hauser on that notification. I think and we can issue a press release and have that shared through their channels and shared on our Facebook. I think what I just want to foreshadow what I would be noticing, not just the adoption of these 3 ordinances, but also that they are explicit as one-time funding, because I think that's a very different conversation with the public than ongoing funding. So because they're fund balance and because the ordinances are addressed as one-time funding. So I just want to make sure that that's okay with the body as we work to kind of explain to the public, right, in a way that they understand versus what the assembly is working on.
Thank you, Ms. Kester. We have Ms. Hale and then Ms. Hughes-Candies.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I am going to object and I'm going to object with the desire to go for option 2, which is public testimony before the February 26th Committee of the Whole. I know that might make it a long meeting. My reason for that objection is the school district is seeking some certainty, and it's a really, really hard place that the school district and the school board is in. And I think as great a moving target as this has been for people, those channels that Ms. Wall had inquired about through the school district, those have been working. And if we can take advantage of those channels and get the word out for that additional public testimony option on the 26th, I would prefer that in order that we can actually pass something on March 4th. So I will object.
Thank you, Ms. Hale. Ms. Hughes-Candies.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I guess comment first, that's going to end in a question / clarification of my understanding. If March 12th is truly the hard stop deadline for the school board, I think it's not great that this hasn't been noticed. Obviously, I've been in that situation myself where you think if you'd told me a couple of days ago, I could have changed my schedule and then I could have been there on Monday night. So I understand that very much from the public. But perhaps we can, I don't know what our allowances would be to make the Zoom testimony more flexible, or how that would work if we needed to do it on a one-time meeting basis. But I say all that because my preferable option would be option 2, kind of for many of the reasons Ms. Hale just said, because if the 12th is really their hard deadline, I hate to be having this conversation on a Friday afternoon and say, and tell everybody they can testify on Monday. They don't have plans, because I'm sure, everybody in the public does have plans, but I also think this is something the community is watching closely. There's plenty of news stories today. So I do think people will know that we're in it, we're in the decision-making process, and they're following it, and they're going to continue to follow it closely. So I just think that makes more sense than, I'm not sure what the value, I very much want the value of the public testimony. We want to hear from the public, but I don't know if we're not going to act on it until the 11th, that's very helpful to the school board. So that's my comment. And I guess, correct me if that's not the hard deadline, or clarify that is a hard deadline.
I'm looking at the superintendent, and as I recall, he wanted to have kind of an answer by the 5th and 6th so he could get stuff to the state and have a chance to move things back and forth as needed. And he is nodding his head. So, Mr. Kelly, and then Ms. Wall, Mr. Bryson, and back to Hale. Ms. Hale.
Thank you. I share the concern that it is pushing things a little bit close. I think on a topic of this important, I think it's super important that we both get our word out and that we also have an opportunity to have a dialogue with our constituents about this. There's a lot of community interest in this. I think it warrants 2 public hearings, and I think this Monday would be too soon for people to turn around and change whatever schedule they have. I think we can get more public testimony and more thoughtful public testimony if we have our first public testimony on the 4th. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Ms. Wall, Mr. Bryson, and then Ms. Hale, and then I'll throw myself in there.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. You know, the packet here makes a distinction between public testimony and public hearing, but really for the public, we're talking about the same thing. You know, if we went through option 2, the public would have 2 options to, I'm seeing head nods, 2 options to provide us feedback, as the same with option 3. I think Monday really fast to get some people, but I'm supportive of option 2 if that means we try to get the word out as fast as we can, try to get some participation on Monday, and then we really make sure we try to get participation on the 4th. So I'd be supportive of option 2 and will object to option 3.
Thank you, Ms. Wall. Mr. Bryson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I too would object to option 3, and I would prefer option 2. We've run into very important community topics before. We've had this very discussion to make sure that we're giving the community ample time to have plans to come, and it does not net us any additional public testimony. It just, so whether we push it back a week and make it life harder for the school district, or we do it on Monday and then have the second public testimony, I don't believe that the number of public testimony would change that significantly. And by keeping with the shorter timeline, we are still giving our constituents 2 opportunities to provide public testimony, and the very convenient Zoom feature that would allow them to testify from the convenience of their home Monday night if it wasn't completely convenient to come here. So I'm going to have to object to option 3, but I would fully support option 2. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Bryson. And before I get to Ms. Hale, I'll also object for the same reasons everybody's spoken. Ms. Hale.
Yeah, just what Ms. Wall said about March 4th also being an opportunity. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Kelly, it's up to you now.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and withdraw my motion.
Would you like to make another one?
I would. I move that we hold public testimony on February 26th at the Committee of the Whole and public hearing, and final adoption at the regular assembly meeting on March 4th. I move option 2 and ask for unanimous consent.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Any objection to that? Seeing none, that motion passes. Ms. Kester.
Thank you, Mayor Rowland. I just want to make one comment. I know we had really unprecedented public participation, or the school district had unprecedented public participation at their meeting last night. So I will be consulting with Superintendent Hauser about an alternate location for the meeting for public testimony to be able to hold any public that would like to attend.
All right, thank you for that. Next, we have public participation on non-agenda items. We don't have much time for this one, but does there anybody want to speak on non-agenda items? Seeing none, we are adjourned, and we will go into our lunch and learn with our property tax people.